Hello, Jim Howard here in Fort Worth, Texas. Today's date, it is 7/29 of 2024. I'm messing with my computer, which I'm doing that every day. That's something I guess I shouldn't mention. Yes, I'm at my computer. Sort of my life. That's sad actually, I think probably. Um, I'm 83 years of age, got some medical conditions. By the way, okay, yeah, you're saying the doctors recommend compression socks for when you have swollen feet and stuff like that, and compression bandages for your legs or whatever. I just started to use it. I think it's kind of scary that, well, no, I'm not going to show you my legs. I might spoil your breakfast, lunch, or dinner. But they're extremely swollen and they don't look good. And it comes up, just pretty much up all the way to my knees. I finally used these the other day. Now, compression socks in the past, I couldn't even, my feet have been so swollen in the past that I couldn't even get any kind of, they're supposed to be compression socks, so they're supposed to compress you, and I couldn't even get them on my feet. This is a wrap, and what's kind of, to me, and I don't, I'm not a doctor, you know, anything, uh, what worries me is, a blood clot. Using this and then having a blood clot go, to your lung, that's not good. To your heart, that's not good. To your brain, that's not good. I don't think there's any good scenarios, But I did use, and man, it compressed the hell out of my. Maybe sometime what I ought to do is well, maybe I'm probably gonna do this again because I haven't got a blood clot as far as I know to my anywhere. So I see my doctor on August 7th, and we'll see what what is going to happen from that point on. And I worked hospital security for 30 years and worked at a number of different hospitals. I had other jobs, my divorced. I've been divorced for a whole long time. But when I was married, Darlene and I met her, she was 18 and I was 26. Her parents owned a tavern and my parents frequented the tavern. I went to their tavern. And so my mother was just telling, her mother how wonderful I was. And Darlene's mother was telling my mother how wonderful, that her daughter was. And so my mother got Darlene's phone number, and then my mother gave that to me. I lived with my parents till age 26. That's when I got married. So, my mother gave me the the phone number, and I said, I don't want that, And then I was working midnight. At that time, I was working the midnight shift as a welder. I was coming home. Now I was working the evening shift welding. I started out working for the Dart Truck Company, a division of Kenworth Division, over the road trucks. Except we made, let's see, maybe I have something up here. I do not. Anyway, gigantic trucks. I worked in the body shop where we made that part of them. Anyway, why am I telling you? Anyway, I was, driving home, so I was getting off, I don't know, 10 or 11 o'clock at night and driving home. And when I drove home to get there, I went by the Crest Drive-In Theater, and it was on a road that I took sort of a, shortcut thing. Went through Swope Park or whatever. But from the drive-in theater, as all those kids were coming out, they were using that road too. So as I'm driving home alone with no girlfriend, and they were all coming with the girls sitting on the boy's lap. I guess that was before seatbelts, maybe. I don't remember now. And I was thinking, and so anyway, I went ahead and called Darlene. When I called, that phone number was the tropical fish shop. She was setting up a tropical fish shop. And so I called, and she told me, I think she told me maybe that or that day, I think, or whatever. I'm not sure if she, or maybe she told, I know she told me later that she was 18 and I was 26, and she thought I would be an alcoholic, which I have never drank. Both my parents did. They did my share of the, they were doing enough that I didn't need to do it. So I never, was a alcoholic or a drinker, period, except of Coke, which is, and then this is in place of water, by the way. Back when they had that thing that was going on, but you don't hear about it that much anymore. People went crazy. I think it was worldwide. Maybe it was just in the United States. I don't think so. That you had to be hydrated. People had to be, everybody was being hydrated. Everybody was carrying around, backpacks, I guess, with water and, things on their belt and things in their car and everything else. Not me. It's a wonder I'm still alive. Because, water is supposed to be a necessity that you need. But I'm 83. Anyway, I guess I can take these, take this off maybe. I'll just minimize it. Anyway, I called Darlene, and, I guess she told me later on that, she knew my parents were alcoholics. Well, I don't think she said that, but, my parents were drinkers and frequenting our parents' tavern. And, see, I was 26. She hadn't done, Darlene had polio when she was about 5 years of age, and that left her having to use, well, in the beginning, she was in the hospital for months and months with polio. You're having to look up polio, aren't you? If I could spell polio, I'd pull it up here, because, there's doctors who don't know what the hell polio is. Ouch. Polio, let's see, polio. How do you spell polio? P-O-P-L, maybe. There it is, polio. Polio. Infectious disease caused by the polio virus. Approximately 75% of cases are asymptomatic. Mild symptoms which can occur include sore throat and fever, blah, 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 blah. That doesn't sound like the polio. Well, that's because we came up with a vaccine for it, but I can remember when I was a kid in grade school or whatever, that, I'll minimize this, during the summertime, polio would come through. They would close schools. They'd close movie theaters. They would close swimming pools, everything. And polio hits you in different areas. Darlene's were in her legs, I guess. And if it hit in your lungs, it wasn't good to be hit by polio. But and I can remember too, as being in that age area. I remember one TV show, or well, television had just come basically. But there was some show where somebody said, well, you can check to see if you have polio. If you can't touch your chin to your chest, that's a sign you've got polio, which I'm sure is not correct. Well, of course there's other signs. Maybe that would be the sign if you had it. I don't know. Anyway, but I remember going to bed and doing that with see if touch my chest or whatever. So it was pretty scary. Darlene, I was, remember, older than Darlene. So the vaccine shots came along, and I got, when they first put them out, everybody got them. Well, not everybody, but when for Darlene, the vaccine came out later, after she got polio, and then the vaccine came out. And we've got a whole bunch of people here in the United States, and I think in other parts of the world. We have some people who should know better, but there are people who don't believe in vaccines. They don't believe in the polio vaccine. They don't believe in all these other, vaccines. Wow. Anyway, about meeting Darlene. So she had polio, so she used a wheelchair, and she used crutches. Yeah, she was using crutches mainly at that point. She had them on, both legs, and she went to, grade school. She went to Catholic grade school. She switched a few times. Well, she always went to a Catholic school. I did too, also. But she had trouble, getting around a lot. And the Catholic nuns, they generally, I don't think, showed much, it was like they expected her to be, even though it was really hard and dangerous for her to, walk around. If she fell in fact, I think she did, at least one time, she fell, and I don't know if she broke something or whatever. They were, these braces. So, but anyway, so Darlene was concerned about me, my age. She figured at 26 years of age, I was a drinker and probably an alcoholic, and who knows what, And the other thing, well, my parents being alcoholics, And there were other reasons that she didn't want to meet me. But anyway, I called her on the telephone, and she said, well, her mother was there helping her, and at the fish shop. And Darlene said, well, I'm busy. I'm setting up my fish shop. Maybe we could meet have a date some other time or whatever. And I said, well, why don't I just come over to your fish shop and talk to you a little bit? By the way, I had a station wagon. It sounded like a ladies' man or whatever. But I put a blanket in the back and some stuff in the back and ice chest or something, and drove over and went in, and they were filling the fish tanks, and her mother and her. So I went in and talked a little bit, and then I said, Darlene, why don't I help you fill these fish tanks, and let's go to the Crest Drive-In movie. And the movie was a voyage to the center of the, where somebody was shrunk down, very small, and then injected and went down into a person's body for some reason, I forget why. And that's the movie that was playing. But anyway, so she agreed. So we went to the drive-in movie, and God help me, we were married shortly after that, very shortly after that. The only delay was we had to, what she didn't want to do, was that we had to, I think it was for 2 weeks on Sunday, the Catholic Church would announce people who were going to be married or whatever, in case you had, in case there was, hey, well, he's already married to me or something like that, I guess. So then we got married, and married for 12 years, and divorced, and by the way, I worked with a lot of guys who didn't pay child support. In fact, I ended up paying more than, I ended up paying child support when I shouldn't have paid child support. A few things like that. And in fact, in order to pay that, I had to work, I worked I was working at that time, full-time security, hospital security. So I worked 2 days a week for a year at a different hospital on the midnight shift, hospital security, in order to make enough money to pay off the Internal Revenue Service. And that was also because the deal was, when we got our divorce, was that I would get the kids. We had 4 kids, by the way. That I would get the kids and claim. I mean, that I would claim them on the. The kids could be with me. So they were with me for, I don't know, a couple of years. She disagrees on the amount of time. I know maybe it wasn't 2 full years, or maybe it was just 2 school things, because I know I sent him to school for 2 years, and also because I'd get, at that point I got things sent home all the time. Mrs. Howard, please send some cookies for such and such, or do this or that, and I was doing that. But of course, in her mind, it was so. Anyway, I gave the ex-wife our house, a nice house. I gave her. My father had been a Boilermaker all his life, and my mother was a Boilermaker during the World War II. I was a Boilermaker for quite a few years. But anyway, okay. So I gave her that car, I gave her the house. It was a nice car because my dad was a union, ended up being, he wasn't always a union official. He got elected. I helped him get elected. I mimeographed all stuff on my mimeograph machine, and did all kinds of stuff to help him. But I also, I became, unfortunately for the companies that I worked for, later for the companies that I worked for them, unfortunately, I became quite knowledgeable and not shy at all about, workers' rights. and I won. I mean, but anyway, oh, so when Darlene moved in, it was hard for her. She was still, well, by then she had gone to having to use crutches. Although, in a house she could, you know, touch the wall and that kind of stuff, and she could do other stuff. But so then eventually she moved in with the 4 kids. Well, not with the 4 kids to start with. She moved in with her mother, and then gradually the kids, moved in, with her. But anyway, so I called when they moved in with, when Darlene moved in with her mother, and when the kids moved in with Darlene. I called up and to check to make sure that I was still going to be claiming the kids because that was one of the deals that we had. I really didn't have very many deals, and her mother said, "Oh yes, you can continue claiming the kids as your dependent." Now, of course, I realized, and I should have known, that, well, one thing, that her parents both owned a tavern, and then when Darlene's father died, her mother was sort of running the tavern, and I think she sold it to a company. That was it. Yeah, she sold it to a guy. I don't know the details exactly, but he didn't have the money. But he agreed. He agreed to, he would take the tavern. It'd be his tavern, but he was paying her, more than like a rent or something, because he was buying it, and it was a successful, tavern. But so. I called and asked, Darlene's mother, and she said, "Oh no, you can claim you claim the kids, Oh, yeah, that's what I was going to say. I knew that the kids living with their grandmother and their mother, Darlene wasn't working. That the grandmother was paying for the rent, paying for the house. Of course she had to pay for the house for herself anyway. Well, the house was paid for, I think, but it was buying food, all that kind of stuff. So if she'd have said, "No, I'm going to claim the kids," then I would have said, then I would have went ahead and paid. I wouldn't have taken them as a deduction, whatever. And I sort of had a feeling, and you always ought to listen. When you have a feeling, you should listen. I worked at a hospital security for 30 years. I've been on the supervisor on the second shift for a year or two. And I went to the day shift, so I was working the day shift, but not as a supervisor, because I didn't ever want to be a supervisor, really. Although I did a lot. Changed a lot. But I went to the day shift, and then so I'd just gone back to the day shift, and I got on the elevator with this guy, and he was an employee, and he was transporting patients. He'd go pick up patients in their room, take them to surgery. Then when the surgery was done, he would take them to either to the intensive care unit, or he'd take them to their room or something like that. But anyway, I saw this guy on the elevator, a black guy, by the way. Is that prejudice? I think not, anyway. Especially, well, you wouldn't know, and you wouldn't believe me anyway. I was not prejudiced. Maybe everybody's a little bit prejudiced. But no, actually, anyway, Anyway, this guy had a patient he was taking someplace, and he was looking at me, and of course I looked at him, you know, and I looked at him, and he looked at me. So then when I making my rounds, when I ran into the other security officers, probably I think up in the security office, I said, this guy that's a transport person for surgery, you know, the black guy, and yeah. And I said, well, I was on the elevator with this guy, and he looked at me like he wants to kill me. He wants to kill me. I said, what have you guys have you had a problem with? No. I said, no problems at all. No. I said, have we put a ticket on his car? No. I said, there's got to be something. No. So anyway, a few days later, I ended up again on the elevator with this guy, the same thing. He wasn't just having a bad day. So then, the hospital then I was working at, Trinity Lutheran Hospital, Main Street, Kansas City Main Street, right there, you know, and forget the number of the street. But anyway, from the side of the hospital, you could see it. There was an adult bookstore or whatever, across the street, and there was something else there, and then there was some taverns on the other side over here, and that type of stuff. But somebody about noon went over and went in the adult bookstore and robbed the place and killed both of the men who worked there. And then there was other places where a robbery took place. And I'm not going to make this story long. Though the story is, there is a lot of detail. But anyway, this is before satellite news, before CNN, that type of stuff. But this story may have been covered in other places, you know, as a small thing down in a corner or whatever, you know. But businesses in Kansas City, Missouri, many of them were locking their doors. If you wanted to get in to get a haircut or buy something, you would have to knock on the door, and they would have to, you know, decide if they wanted to let you in. And well, it turns out that guy who was transporting patients at that hospital that I worked at, that was him. He was going out, you know, and luckily he did not decide to, you know, rob a movie theater or someplace where there was, you know, or maybe even a cafe or something where there'd be 15 or 20 people or something. You know, he was doing like convenience stores and adult bookstores and stuff like that. But that was the guy. Last I heard, he was still in prison. And he's not going to get out. They tried him for, I think, 2 or 3 murders, but I don't think they tried him for any more. But they had, you know, they knew it was him. I think, you know, they knew it was him. There's more to this story. Like when things that appeared on, like I was home the day that they arrested him at the hospital. No, when he left the hospital, they didn't want to have that happen, a shooting in the hospital. So they waited till he left, and then so anyway, I had the day off, and they described, it said on the news that this blah, blah, blah that's been going on. They have a description on a vehicle, and they described the vehicle. And I said, it was a vehicle that you would remember. I mean, you know, a pink, it was painted pink. Not all the time he was doing the thing, but just on, anyway, I forget the details. I was home, and I said, well, there's a car like that in our parking lot. And it was my day off. I said, when I go in tomorrow, I'm going to check the car, check who it belongs to or whatever. And I was thinking I would go in, you know, and make my rounds and look in the car to see if I see a gun laying in there or see if I see ammunition or something. That's what I was thinking. But when he left that day, that's when the police arrested him. Long story. How long have I been talking? 30 minutes. Oh, I guess I should continue. I don't know why I got signs, but that's what you expect. Warning, warning. Jim Howard has stories. But, man, there's a lot. Some of these stories, well, on these videos, you'll probably find them if you go and look on my video, Anyway, this is a ham radio that I purchased. And where is it sitting here? Here it is. Oh, where's the camera? Okay. And there's another ham radio sitting over here that I have. Whoops. Okay, let me plug this back in. There's no danger of me plugging the wrong one in. Let me do that just to make sure. This is a dual band, 2 meters and 440. This one, which is only $30, by the way, and the prices, I forget what I paid for that, but I paid a lot more for, I paid $700 or $800 for at least one ham radio, a nice one. Wish I had it now.
Welcome.
Anyway, I guess I should have held that a little bit longer or something, maybe in case you wanted to see it. This one is small, $30 or $35 at the most. And it covers other bands. Well, of course, they all things like there's a Weather Bureau on that one. They have that service out, but this covers that's dual band, 2 bands, 2 meters and 440. This covers 2 meters and 440 plus a few other bands, including the aircraft. And what else? A whole bunch of stuff. A whole bunch of stuff that you can, listen to on this and talk on, or you can. A ham radio operator can talk on the amateur radio band, but you don't want to key up and talk to an aircraft or whatever. Oh, so are you a TWA pilot? Well, my father was a TWA. Yuck. Good way to be fined major bucks and maybe to be responsible for a bad situation and to also, so anyway, I ordered like I've programmed these things, way hams do, and so this company came out with a much easier way to program the thing, much easier. So instead of doing the way I waited, I can still get 2 bands on this and aircraft and stuff, but I ordered and it's coming in, and it should be much easier. I think I'll be using my cell phone and to actually program it. So maybe I can minimize this. I've got a hat coming, an election hat. I threw the ones I had, I went and I ordered in 3 hats, red. Does this sound like anything you shouldn't be ordering here in the United States? 3 red hats, and I put Howard's Notebook on them, or ShowMeBlog. I think it was ShowMeBlog, something like that. And then some of you started saying, Jim, I cannot believe that you are wearing a hat that looks like a Trump hat. And then after that, I stopped wearing them. And I threw them away, actually. But I've got another hat coming, but I don't think it's going to be here till, well, August. I think about August 1st. And anyway, I think I can shut this down. Looks like the mic thing is quite noisy. Is there a fan running on my? I have hearing problem, by the way. Testing, testing. Okay, I think this. Anyway, let me shut this down. Here is somebody, by the way. He's going to communicate with the International Space Station. He's an amateur radio operator.
You notice how I was turning it to and it would focus it in?
Because the polarization changes.
Yeah, I can't do that with that rotor. So
Right.
that's why I've been using this more. Because I can't do that. 10 seconds.
Let's see if he makes the contact. I think just about every one of the astronauts or cosmonauts that's gone into space has been an amateur radio operator.
I usually do this and I can hear it click and I see a little
Let me bring the volume down here. One of the problems with Doppler shift or whatever is when a ham radio operator is moving in a car or in an aircraft or whatever, there is because it is moving in space, or whatever, the frequency will be changing a little bit. And so if you want to carry on a communications, you need to adjust for that. And I've received the, signals from the International Space Station. Well, before Sputnik 1, I tracked Sputnik 1, the first object that went into, satellite that went into space. And others, Explorer 7 and all kinds of stuff like that. I headed, not for pay, it wasn't a pay thing, it was an amateur radio thing. I monitored for the Federal Communications Commission. They gave me a special phone number, not just me, but X number of amateur radio operators before an International Telecommunications Union meeting, that we would monitor and report stations that were operating out of internationally assigned bands that they should be in, so that they could make changes and see where stations were and where they shouldn't be, and that kind of. I had a lot of fun with amateur radio. Well, before amateur radio, shortwave listening and stuff like that. With shortwave radio, I forget which pope it was died, and it was on the news. Pope so and so died, and so anyway, when it was time for the English language portion of a broadcast from the Vatican, I think they're repeating this. This looks like a short video, maybe, and it's a repeat thing here. Let me hit this. And yeah, I got a fan running like crazy on my. Anyway, I tuned into. Okay, so I heard the Pope died. Okay, the Pope died, but then I tuned in, at 7 or 8 p.m. on my shortwave radio, which I I listened to stations all over the world. Radio Prague, Czechoslovakia, which was a communist, they were really nice, and they were not fucking crazy, or well, at least in their broadcast, they were one of the nicest. But of course, Radio Moscow and Radio Peking, and those were not, But anyway, this guy here is a local amateur radio operator, and he has. I'll put a link to. If I'll try to remember to put a link to his site, in case you're interested. He does a really great job. Anyway, I tuned into the Vatican radio, and I forget the interval signal they used. The bells from the Vatican or whatever, which was nothing special. This was a normal thing, the bells. And then I forget the little tune or something rather. And then I don't speak Latin, I was a Catholic, but I was an older boy. I knew a few words in Latin. But then it's something like Lazeji, Jesus, Christ or something like that. That's what they said, and then the bells or whatever stopped. And then they said in English, the Holy Father, so and so, has died, and I got chills up and down my spine from hearing that. I was surprised by that, I went to Catholic schools and everything. I went to a high school. It was a Catholic high school. It was what they called a 55C school. There was, for high schools in the United States, there was ROTC. And the school I went to, we were ROTC also, except we were what they called a 55C school, which we were military. It was an academy. They actually called it an academy. It doesn't mean we were rich kids or anything, It wasn't a rich, believe me. But we did more than we did more than the public schools. Maybe they would do 2 days of ROTC class, not all day long. I mean, an hour class or maybe 2 of ROTC a couple times a week. We were in uniform. If we had I went 4 years. You got a demerit. You'd get a demerit if you had a button unbuttoned. If you had your hat off when it should be on, or on when it should be off, or inside your hat should be off. And I know a friend of mine that we went to grade school together, and both of us then went to De La Salle. He got his hand whacked because he was in the smart class, and he didn't normally take one of our dumb classes. But he was worried. He wanted to make sure he got good grades. Well, he made good grades because he was in the smart class and I was in the dumb class. We're still friends, by the way. Fred. And but then he took an easy class. One of the dumb classes, to make sure that his grade level stayed high. And he went on to get a PhD, by the way. When he got out, he went in the Marine Corps, and then from the Marine Corps he went with these, he got a PhD and worked for the government in the military. Well, not in the military, but in the military. I know at Fort Hood here in Texas, it was a large part of that, I think, was a Indian reservation, and probably more than one, spread out or whatever. And so his job, I don't know what his job was, and he wrote a couple books, He wrote one, I think, about Fort Hood, the thing there. But anyway. Oh, so at De La Salle, he took that easy class. So when he took the easy class, he went, and it kind of messed up his schedule a little bit. But he came in, for the class, and he had his hat on, and you have to take your hat off when you're military indoors or whatever. And so the brother called him up to the front, took a ruler and whacked his hand or whatever. So it was just a few years ago. Fred and I have stayed in contact. From time to time. But that's when I found out, there was 2 homerooms of the smart kids who took Latin and Greek and what's a high thing of, we took general math in the dumb class. And, but I didn't realize until he told me something. I said, well, wait a minute. He said something, well, yeah, I got whacked. He said, I never got whacked with a ruler before. I never saw anything that, I didn't know that happened in there at the school. And I said, you didn't? I didn't have homework. And well, one kid in the class didn't have homework one time, and we all got whacked. So that kind of pissed me off. I knew I was in the dumb class, but I didn't know that the 2 smart classes of kids, they didn't get corporal punishment used on them and other stuff, so. How long have I been talking? 46 minutes. Should I make this an hour? I don't know. I don't think so. Well, I think I covered some subjects that I should come back to and talk. They're talked about on there. I think someplace, well, you'll have a hard time finding it. I haven't indexed things the way I should because, well, one, in order to make a video and then for me to index it, I would have to go back because I don't have a script, it's just Jim Howard. In order, to index a thing, I'd have to go back and listen to it and make notes and do stuff like that. I don't want to fucking hear myself, I want you to hear me, because that's going to be your punishment. When you get to heaven, you get up there and St. Peter meets you at the Golden Gate. Okay, let's see here. Okay, wait a minute, yeah. You listen to Jim Howard's YouTube thing, so you don't need to go to purgatory. You're not going to hell. Definitely you're not going to hell. And not only that, you're not having to go to purgatory because you have suffered. You're going right to heaven. The only thing is now when you get in these gates here and you start down, be quiet for a little bit because see, what's the story? The Baptist, the Baptists are there and they don't know that Catholics get into heaven, so be quiet because you're just going by, something like that, a story like that. Won't be funny, it wasn't. Thank you very much for watching.